Dreams and Spirits, Part 2. Unclean Spirits. What are your dreams like? What do you dream about? Dreams are important. As I explained in Part 1, Yahuwah may be trying to communicate with you, or you may be unknowingly communicating and making alliances with unclean spirits. But what are unclean spirits? Let's find the earthly definition first. So it says, in religious contexts, unclean spirits or evil spirits often refer to malevolent supernatural entities believed to cause spiritual and mental affliction, often associated with demonic possession and opposition to Yahuwah. So basically, an unclean or evil spirit is the same as a demon. Unclean spirits serve Satan and seek to destroy people's lives with their oppression. They are called unclean because they're tolerated by sin. Yahusha, who we know to be the son of Yahuwah, the creator of all that we see and all that we don't see, cast out unclean spirits from people during his time on earth. So let's read a little about this, shall we? Let's begin by going through Bible, particularly Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which are called the Gospels because gospel means good news, and their stories contain great news. We'll look at other books as well, though. I love them all. So let's go. Let's start at Mark chapter 5, verses 2 to 5. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always, day and night, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. Yikes. It sounds scary, but this is how some unclean spirits cause people to behave. They're literally not in control of themselves and cannot be stopped by any human power. Not even by metal, like chains. But let's look at another example. Let's go to Acts chapter 5, verse 16. There came also a multitude out of the cities round about unto Jerusalem, bringing sick folks and them which were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed every one. Here we see that sometimes unclean spirits can cause sickness and problems with our bodies, which should really make you wonder what's going on when many people suddenly become sick, or when people say things are contagious. Are they catching a physical sickness or a spiritual one? Next, let's go to Acts chapter 19, verses 13 to 16. Then certain of the vagabond Yahudim, exorcists, took upon them to call over them which had evil spirits the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, saying, We adjure you by Yahusha whom Paul preacheth. And there were 7 sons of Sceva, a Yahudim, and chief of the priests, which did so. And the evil spirit answered and said, Yahusha I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? And the man in whom the evil spirit was leaped on them and overcame them and prevailed against them, so that they fled out of that house naked and wounded. Whoa. I mentioned this story in a previous video, and for good reason. In the spiritual realm, authority is serious. If you don't have the authority to do something, but you're trying to do it anyway, you can open yourself up to attacks by unclean spirits, which we'll discuss in another video. Do not play with Yahuwah or his power. The spiritual realm is serious. Next, let's go to Matthew chapter 12, verse 22. Then was brought unto him one possessed with the devil, blind and dumb. Dumb means you can't talk. It's not unintelligent. And he healed him, insomuch that the blind and the dumb both spake and saw. Again, we see physical issues like blindness and not being able to speak being caused by an unclean spirit. It's like I said from the beginning, everything in our physical world is controlled and or influenced by the spiritual world. Next, let's go to Acts chapter 16, verses 16 through 18. And it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with the spirit of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. The same followed Paul and us, and cried, saying, These men are the servants of the Most High Elohah, which show unto us the way of salvation. And this did she many days. But Paul, being grieved, turned and said to the spirit, I command thee in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach to come out of her. And he came out the same hour. So first, what's divination? Divination is the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or hidden knowledge, often through interpreting omens, signs, or by claiming contact with supernatural forces. Definitely sounds like witchcraft. For example, using crystal balls, fortune telling, tarot cards, astrology, numerology, all that zodiac stuff, dowsing rods, tea leaf reading, using crystals or gems for power. There are all so many ways to commit this sin that we really need to read and remember the other rules Yahuwah gave to his chosen people to make sure we're not committing this sin. You don't want unclean spirits following you around. Anyway, this story is fascinating. An unclean spirit was causing this girl to follow Paul around for days and announced that his mission to everyone was to help them find salvation. Of course, through Yahushua HaMashiach. How annoying. Finally, we'll look at one more. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, one of my favorites. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. By the way, principalities and powers are spirits created by the Most High. They're in charge of things. Go back to one of the other videos, I think it's Names Part 2, for an explanation of principalities. Powers is pretty basic. It's literally the spirit that gives you the power to do something. Anyway, this verse right here informs all believers of Yahuwah Elohah and his son Yahushua HaMashiach that their real enemies are not other human beings, no matter how annoying they may be sometimes, but rather the spirits behind the people. For instance, people who are often mean for no reason are called mean-spirited, because it's a well-known fact, or at least it was back in the day, that these kinds of people had unclean spirits that caused their meanness. It's the same with other negative behaviors and attitudes. They're caused by the unclean spirits that live in us. Okay, now that we have a better understanding of what unclean spirits are and what they do, let's discuss how they interact with us in our dreams, because this is a series about dreams and spirits. When we're asleep, our spirit is usually the most active. Our body needs to sleep, but our spirits don't. They were not made to sleep, but they need to be well fed with the word of Yahuwah and with works of righteousness. You don't want to go into the spirit world without your breastplate of righteousness. Trust me, you will get hurt. Let's go to Matthew chapter 4, verse 4. But he asked and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Yahuwah. Food will not feed our spirits, just the words of Yahuwah. We need his word, which is why we need to be reading. Next, John 6:63. It's the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit, and they are life. Literally, the words that Yahushua said, even the words like Yahuwah's word, it is a spirit. It breathes life. So when you're taking it in, you are not just getting the spirit of it and the spiritual energy from it, but you are being given life. We need this. See, when you choose to obey Yahuwah and take in his word by reading and following his son's footsteps, our spirits are fed and energized and given life. Let's discuss one more way that we can accidentally find ourselves making covenants or deals and agreements with unclean spirits. So how do we make covenants with unclean spirits? Well, our actions during the day contribute to how our spiritual interactions will be while we sleep. The sin that you serve during the day will be the same spirit that you serve at night. Don't get into that type of trouble. Trust me. Well, don't trust me. Trust Yahuwah. But this is why he has the law, because he doesn't want us to have to do these things. He gave us the law to prevent us from doing things that will cause us to serve another spirit that is not him, something that will torment you and punish you. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's wait. Ask yourself, have you been overly angry and not sought Yahuwah? Have you been arrogant or rude or proud? Have you stopped displaying the fruit of the Spirit? Did you sin? Sin is the primary way to make a covenant with unclean spirits. Sin opens the door for the unclean spirit to enter. This is called breaking a hedge. Yahuwah creates hedges of protection around all of his children, but sin breaks through those hedges and allows unclean spirits to enter our lives. If you're not reading Yahuwah's word and feeding your spirit will not be strong enough to recognize the unclean spirit or fight it. Instead, it'll learn to just live with it until your spirit becomes dependent on it instead of Yahuwah, and that's not what you want. A lot of times when we have behaviors that are not good, or when we have a bad day, we immediately go to those type of things. I'm angry. I need to listen to my angry music. It makes me feel better. But now you've become dependent on that anger spirit. I'm sad. I'm going to do this or that to make me feel better. Now you become dependent on that thing instead of Yahuwah, and that's no good. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 59 verse 2. But your iniquities have separated between you and your Eloah, and your sins have hid his face from you that he will not hear. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 verse 8. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it, and whosoever breaketh a hedge, a serpent shall bite him. Job chapter 1 verse 10. Hast thou not made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the works of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. By the way, that last verse was literally a conversation between Satan and Yahuwah. There are other ways to establish evil covenants with unclean spirits, but we will save that for the next video. But we'll end here with some words of caution. While you're sleeping, beware, because your spirit does not need to eat normal food. So do not eat or drink in your dreams. You don't need it. Your spirit is not physical. It does not need hugs, kisses, or physical contact. So do not let anything touch you in your dreams, even if it seems like someone you know. It can look like whoever. Do not. Finally, use these verses when you're dreaming and things somehow don't seem right, when it starts to get a little odd, or if you're starting to question anything. Luke 10:19. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Psalm 34:7. The angel of Yahuwah encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them. Isaiah 54:17. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that rises up against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of Yahuwah, and their righteousness is from me, says Yahuwah. Psalm 119:115. Depart from me, you evildoer. I'll keep the commandments of Yahuwah. We should all be reading Bible and remembering verses, so try your best. Remember these. This is why I give you all the cards. Read. But until next time, Hallelujah.